Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Welcome home, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I got a little bit held up. Inshallah, we're going to be continuing our reading of the content of character, which is a compilation of hadith narrations from the life of the Prophet ﷺ that regard or that are taking into account the refining of a person's character. Character, somebody asked, what's one way to understand character? The best understanding of character is that it is the appearance of the inside of a person, right? It's the appearance of the heart. So while we think a lot about our external, we try to beautify and wear nice garments and take care of our appearance. Character ultimately is the appearance of the inside, right? So as people get to know us, as people spend more time with us, they start to see what we really look like internally. And so this book is ultimately a book of trying to look at yourself in the mirror of the heart, to see what your reflection looks like and to see how you can refine and how we can all become closer to the prophetic character of the Prophet ﷺ. So last week we talked about two narrations. The first one was kind of like the introduction or the preface, which was the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-Islamu nadhifun fatanadhafu فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا نَظِيفٌ. That he said that Islam is clean and pure, and so people should clean and purify themselves because nobody will enter paradise except that they are clean or purified. And so we talked about how the narrator or the compiler of the hadith, he put these together, and he put the first one as a hadith on cleansing oneself, because the activity or the journey that we're embarking on is one of trying to cleanse ourselves. And so if a person doesn't focus on this cleansing, then Jannah will not be within reach for them. So this is a natural part of that journey. Then the next narration we talked about were the descriptions of the hypocrite. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave three characteristics. He says, Ayatul munafiqi thalath. He says there are three characteristics of a hypocrite. And then he mentioned them. When they speak, they lie. When they make a promise, they break it. And when they are trusted, they violate that trust. So this person, they have these flaws in their integrity. Whenever they speak, they tell lies. Whenever they make a promise, they break it. And whenever they are trusted, they violate that trust. We went last week over some of the explanation of these narrations. The next one that we're going to cover today is a hadith found in Al-Bayhaqi, where the Prophet ﷺ, it is said that he said, "At-ta'anni min Allah wal-ajalatu min ash-shaytan." Very short narration. The Prophet ﷺ had this impeccable gift of being able to say very profound things in a very small space. And so one of the examples of this is this narration. At-ta'anni min Allah wal-ajalatu min ash-shaytan. He says that ta'anni, which translates in a couple different ways. It can have the meaning of patience. It can have the meaning of a person being forbearant, right? Patience. It can be thoughtfulness, consideration, all of these kind of hovering around this same concept. And he says that this concept, consideration or patience, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he does what we know in Arabic is the identifying of the opposite. They say in Arabic that you can know things by knowing their opposites. If you know the opposite, then you know the thing. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gives one side of the spectrum, and then he gives the other side of the same spectrum, that same line. So at-ta'anni min Allah wal-ajalatu min ash-shaytan. And haste or rushing is from the devil. Now this hadith, one of the principles of the words of the Prophet ﷺ is that while we accept them, of course, on their face value, we do not make sweeping generalizations or rulings based on 4 or 5 words. You have to do the exploration of the vocabulary and also the context of the revelation. But you can derive different wisdoms from these 4 or 5 words fairly prevalently. The first is that the scholars mention with this hadith that there is a general ruling in life. There's a general maxim in life. Right? We have all these maxims that we follow. Do unto others, right, as you would like to be done unto yourself, the golden rule. Treat others with kindness. Forgive and forget, right? These are all these maxims that we hopefully adhere to and abide by. These are general maxims. But there are times and there are situations where a person would actually be better off taking an exception and taking a concession and not necessarily abiding by that maxim exactly. Okay? We have become very, very accustomed to whenever we're learning like a good principle, like a good life principle, that we say, but what about my situation? What about me? So in this hadith, he's going to say, Ata'ani min Allah. Consideration and patience is from shaitan. And everyone in the room is thinking about how can I justify my impatience? How can I say, well, what if your kids are running late? What if you're going to miss the flight? What if the school emailed you about punctuality and tardiness? What, all of these kinds of exceptions. Let's not go into the exceptions right now. This is a very typical response. Let's talk about the general principle. What is the general principle? The general principle is that without a doubt, a person that can be considerate, measured, patient, thoughtful, a person that doesn't have knee-jerk reactions, a person that's not impulsive with their speech and behavior, that person is behaving in a way that is aligned with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for them. That person is definitely behaving in a way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected that person, has given them a force field of what? Of this trait that is going to save them from a lot of regret. How many times have we regretted speaking up and saying something too quickly? Maybe responding, or maybe it was countering, or maybe it was talking back. How many times have we regretted sending a message too quickly without rereading what was in the message before? Oh, I misread it and made myself now look a little bit foolish because I assumed you said something you didn't. How many times have we wished that we held back, even subhanAllah, our thoughts, to not jump to conclusions and to not assume the worst in certain situations? So this principle that the Prophet ﷺ is giving us is a principle that in almost all scenarios, 99.9 scenarios, is going to be a trait that will make your life undeniably a better life. Which is what? Be a person that is measured, be a person that is thoughtful, be a person that is patient, that waits, that deliberates, that thinks. The Prophet ﷺ, one time he met a companion. His name was Ashaj Abdul Qais. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that you have two traits. There's two traits that you have that Allah ta'ala, He loves. And the man was kind of taken aback. Imagine meeting the Prophet of Allah and then suddenly he just tells you, by the way, there's two things about you that Allah loves. Like you'd be like overwhelmed, like, wow, what are, I'm lucky to even have one, but I have two. And the man said, what is it? And he said, you have deliberateness and you have perseverance. You're a person that has ta'anni, you're thoughtful. You have this consideration of others, but when something is required, you're principled and you persevere. You keep pushing through it. So the first lesson from this hadith is what? Be a person that no matter what level you're at right now, you reconsider your ability to remain thoughtful and patient in every situation. And everybody likes to imagine themselves as being patient generally, right? We think of ourselves, yeah, I'm pretty patient. I'm a pretty patient person. Like I wait in line, I'm patient, I don't make a fuss. We see examples like, I don't know how many of you flew this weekend. Anyone get caught? Canceled flights, delays, anybody? Alhamdulillah. Well, I guess you wouldn't be here right now. But okay, so the point being is that all these situations, you see the demonstrated reaction, right? The person that's losing it, as the kids say, crashing out. You see this person that's absolutely humiliating themselves. And it's easy for us to look at that situation and say, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. But as Ibn Ata'illah says, he says, don't convince yourself that you're good by only comparing yourself to people that are so obviously worse than you, right? If you see someone who is so obviously behaving worse than you would ever behave, don't create a nice little, the emotional comforter, the emotional duvet. Or, I'm pretty good. Why? Because look at that person. They're screaming and yelling at that attendant. No, look at the situations. Be honest and look at the situations when you were impatient. Look at the situations when you were a person that was pushing, right? If any of you have kids, you probably know exactly what this feels like, getting to school on time every morning. or going anywhere on time, really, right? That urgency, that bubbling up, that irritation that you feel. Or if you're trying to get somewhere on time, like a wedding, and someone is taking too long to get ready, or if you're trying to catch a flight, you can imagine the scenarios. It's easy to look at the scenarios where people are obviously behaving out of line, but look at the micro scenarios in your life where you feel that and ask yourself, what is the difference between being 60 seconds late or being 3 minutes late? What is the difference? Why am I so pressed to say something or to do something that's going to make that car ride absolutely miserable? You know, there's these memes that pop up now, these reels on TikTok and on Instagram, where it's like the POV of the family driving on the road trip. And it's like, yeah, we're heading on our family vacation. We almost got divorced, right? It's like, because the process of leaving, the process of going out of the house was so combative, why? Because we did not demonstrate that ta'anni, that patience, that thoughtfulness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and look at this, min Allah, it's from Allah. It's a divine trait that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. On another level, imagine about this. Who is more considerate or patient than Allah? Like, if you ever find it difficult to be patient with somebody, just imagine how patient Allah has been with you. How many times? The expectations, the reminders, the constant second chances. How many times has Allah given us yet another chance to make the right choice? And we make the wrong choice, and we make a mistake. We oversleep, we delay, we plan poorly. And Allah has so much patience with us. So really, when a person can demonstrate that level of thoughtfulness and patience, they're not only demonstrating their own strength, they're demonstrating that they are reflecting that God-given divine gift, that trait that they only can receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's some narrations that the Prophet ﷺ also shares us regarding patience, and I want to give you one of them in particular. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, when he talked about all of the different provisions that a person can have. You know, when I say the word provision, we typically think of wealth. You know, we should ask Allah to bless our provisions. And everyone thinks about their salary or their home or their assets, whatever they might have materially. But we believe that provisions extend beyond that. A person's provision is not just their material asset. It also can be the relationships they have, right? You know, they say your net worth is your network, right? So a person, it's not just the money, it's also the relationships you have. When the Prophet ﷺ described the relationship he had with al-Mu'mineen Khadija, radiallahu anha, our mother, he said, "Ruziqtu hubbuha." I was granted her love. I was provided her love. By who? By Allah. So provision can take many different forms. It doesn't just have to be money. It doesn't just have to be wealth. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in a narration that there is no ma ruziqa abdun khayran lahu wala awsa'a min as-sabr. There is no provision that a servant of Allah has been provided. And we believe provision to come what? From the heavens. We believe that it's like a divine descent. That's why when the Prophet ﷺ talked about rain, he used to actually, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to actually take off his top garment, the rida he would wear, and he would go out in the rain and he would let the rain fall onto him, right? I know that those crunchy and granola amongst us are like, yeah, the Prophet was a tree hugger. No. He used to, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to let the rain fall upon him. Why? Because he says it's coming fresh from the heavens. It's like from Allah. He understood that there's a divine gift constantly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the word rizq means what? It's descended from Allah. He says there is not any provision that has descended from Allah that is better for the servant, or awsa, which means it's more vast. It's more applicable in every scenario than patience. If you look at your life and you look at every single story that you have every single day, it could be how you deal with your family, your coworkers, your neighbor, the cashier at Trader Joe's. It could be anybody. The waitress at Noodle Wave. May Allah protect Noodle Wave. Ameen ya Rab, right? It could be any of these scenarios. You will always, if you look at those scenarios, if you ask yourself one question, how might I have improved that interaction? Almost inevitably, patience will increase the quality of that interaction. Perhaps I rushed this person. Perhaps I showed them a face of irritation. You know, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He maintains and He preserves this esteemed status of the Prophet ﷺ. He actually chastises people for talking to him normally, talking to him like anybody else. لا تجهروا بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض. Don't talk to him like you talk to other people. You know how you walk by and you're like, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? Right? Imagine if I saw Sheikh Abdel Nasser and I said, what's up, Jangda? I would kill myself. You know, I would actually off my, because that's just so disrespectful. I can't finish the sentence. I don't want to trigger anybody. But you know what I mean, right? Okay, Isharatan. I can't do that. I still get weirded out when people call me Murphy. It's strange. I'm like, I don't know. You're not my gym coach. Why are you calling me by my last name? So the idea that we speak to each other so casually. What's going on, man? How you doing? What's going on? Allah said, don't ever speak to the Prophet ﷺ. لا تجهروا بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض. With the same tone that you talk to each other. Allah is doing the tarbiyah of the ummah. لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. Don't raise your voice above his voice. Right? So there's constantly in the Quran this reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us He's not like you, He's not like you, He's not like you. But we have one story in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, and we'll say this word very carefully. I don't want to say the word corrects or chastises. No, it's too strong. He teaches the Prophet ﷺ. We have one example where Allah teaches the Prophet ﷺ. And what is the lesson of that moment, that teaching moment? It's actually patience. The Prophet ﷺ was the most patient. He dealt with people that you and I could never imagine. But there was one time in one scenario when it was very high stakes, high pressure, when a person came to him, Abdullah bin Maktoum, and asked him a question and unknowingly interrupted him, and asked him a question that was not critical or urgent, and the Prophet ﷺ was in a very, very critical political conversation. And in that moment, this man, who was blind, by the way, the Prophet ﷺ, the tafsir explains, Abasa wa tawalla. He frowned and turned away. But that translation is not correct because even the tafsir says he did not frown like you and I frown. You know, you and I have that face, right? It could be called like the resting, face. Now they also have Gen Z stare, right? The Prophet ﷺ did not frown like you and I frown, like that angry look. The way the tafsir explains it is that very quickly, almost momentarily, his eyebrows, I don't even want to say furrowed, they twitched. Like his eyebrow just quickly moved and then went back to normal. Not only can people who have 20/20 vision not see it, but this man was blind aslan. So Allah actually showed the world, and by extension showed us, this moment, and this man never even saw it because he couldn't see it. Abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahu al-a'ma, when the blind man came to him. That's the only time in the Quran that you can find an identifiable moment where Allah taught the messenger, his Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it had to do with what? Not that he wasn't patient, but just being more patient. We can always be more patient. Everybody can be a little bit more patient in every scenario, even if it's by 1%, 2%. You can always increase your patience. It was so strong of a reminder and lesson to the Prophet ﷺ that from that moment forward, whenever he saw Abdullah bin Maktoum walk into the masjid or walk into any gathering, he would loudly, again, greet him because he was blind. He would say, Assalamu alaikum. He says, peace be upon you. The one who Allah taught me because of him. He basically would give him that title. You're the one that because of you, I got a lesson. Lovingly, he would say that. And Abdullah bin Maktoum, radiallahu anhu, would smile. He's a very illustrious companion, and that moment shows us. But even the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given this gentle reminder from Allah that what? You can always be a little bit more patient in every scenario. Then, so this hadith says there's nothing that's more better or vast in the life of a person than patience. It applies in every scenario. It applies on the x-axis and the y-axis, up and down. Now let's go to the second half of the hadith. At-ta'anni min Allah. And then he says, وَالْعَجَلَةُ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ. And hastiness or rushing is from shaitan. And this again is the same idea. We're going back to the general principle here. No one here says, well, what if you're running late? Well, what if don't go to the exception right away. Just stop. We have this knee-jerk reaction. But what if, don't say but what if. Just let's let the general principle fall upon us. The general principle is what? Being patient is good. Rushing is bad. Are there certain scenarios in life where, yes, you have to rush? Of course, of course. If a person does not show urgency in a moment that demands urgency, then that itself is wrong. That's flawed. If somebody is injured and needs to be taken to the hospital, you shouldn't be like, let's just slow down a little bit. Let's just really take in the moment. No, that's not the time for that. Be quick, respond quickly. First responders, right? Let's go. Let's get a move on. But that's an exception. This is not talking about your daily life. This is an exceptional thing. When we talk about daily life, we go back to the first principles, which is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So consideration from Allah. Rushing, haste is from shaitan. Let's apply this hadith in a few different ways. Number one, let's first think about, and let's go outside in. Let's think about how these traits affect our relationships with people around us. Let's think about how considerate we are of people, how gentle we are with people when it comes to time. Let's talk about how we treat others when it comes to how rushed we make people feel. Okay? And let's really reflect on that. The second thing is let's look at how we are with Allah. Let's again remember, like we said earlier, there's no one more patient than Allah. Allah is the most patient because Allah but Allah does give us chances every single day. And that's nothing more than a manifestation of His patience, subhanah. So we are the recipients of the patience of Allah, and we need to then reciprocate by what? When it comes to our prayer. Do we rush or do we slow down? When it comes to anything at all, when it comes to listening to the Quran or do we rush or do we slow down? What's our disposition when it comes to those things? If we are constantly categorizing everything that is worship-oriented as being quick and efficient, and we have to finish, and so I can go back to my real life, so I can go back to what really matters, then I have to ask myself, am I considerate and patient when it comes to my relationship with Allah, or am I rushing everything? And if I'm rushing everything, then that means what? That means that I'm actually getting my spiritual development from shaitan. The hastiness that shaitan is pressing me for is from him. And even within our religion, the idea of setting yourself up for success is there. If a person needs to go to the bathroom and they want to pray, this is a 30 and up conversation, okay? Just go to the bathroom and remake your wudu. There's been too many times where we're like, I'm just going to pray while I have wudu. That is like a death sentence for khushu'. You're like, I'm just going to pray while I have wudu because I need to go to the bathroom after. What are you thinking about in rak'ahs 1, 2, 3, and 4? You're having these like deep fantasies about the bathroom. You're like, wow, it's probably clean. I'm so excited. I'm not going to have to worry about it. No, just why are you setting yourself up to have such a rushed prayer? Such a quality deprived salah? When making wudu takes like 2 minutes, right? But it's this weird hyper efficiency trap that we've all become unfortunately victims of. The hyper efficiency trap. Where can I save a few minutes in my day? I'm not joking when I tell you this story. Wallah al-alim, this is true. I have a friend who has not only an electric toothbrush. You guys have an electric toothbrush? Right? It saves us time, energy. Don't have to injure our elbows, right? Or wrist, or whatever. He has 2 of them, and he uses them at the same time. Wallah al-azim, I'm not making this up. I asked him, I said, and he's a really smart guy, like very smart. Like many people look up to him for his intelligence. So I stood there and I asked him, I said, what on earth are you bilaterally brushing your teeth for? And he goes, I get a minute of my day back. I get a minute of my day back. And again, I love him. He's a good guy. I'm not trying to make him seem like he's some kind of like, unintelligent. No, he's very intelligent, mashallah. But I heard that, and whether or not he was being sarcastic or he was being literal, like legitimate, the story is still the same. We are all victims of the hyper-efficiency culture. How can I save time? How can I do this? How can I do that? How can I have my car drive for me? Why? So I can text while I'm driving. Again, yes, you might say, why are you bringing these things up? Because this is all symptoms of that same issue. We are more concerned about squeezing out as much time as possible from our day, instead of actually being people that are like present in the things that we're doing in that day. And we avoid fast food. We avoid cheap, fast fashion. We avoid all these things. Why? Because they're not quality. We don't like things that are not quality. But look at our time. Look at our salah. Our salah is the equivalent of fast fashion and fast food. It's like cheap. But if we can put more effort into it, make our salah from fast food to organic Whole Foods, right? Not the store, right? Jeff Bezos, may Allah Ta'ala protect us. Not the fast fashion, right? Not the things that where they make them in horrific scenarios with basically slave labor, and they're pumping out these garments and you're just buying them one after another. No, but actual high quality. When someone wants to tell you that this thing is a nice thing, they say, what? I got this made. This was made for me in Morocco. It wasn't. This was not. It was gifted to me. I would never pick this color, right? But I'm not that courageous. It's a nice color, but I'm not that courageous, okay? But when someone says, this is a high quality piece, they say, what? I got this made. But when it comes to our salah, we don't have that same language. Like, I really invested in that salah. I really extracted in that salah. One of my teachers, he said, before you pray any prayer, ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of this salah? What am I trying to get out of this? What issue in my life is causing me a lot of weight and anxiety that I want this Maghrib today on Tuesday to solve for me? And that changed my perspective. Whenever I find myself rushing through prayers, you know what I realize? I didn't ask myself that question before I started. Because a person who's looking for solutions doesn't rush when they're asking. They take their time. If you finally have a meeting with the CEO, you're not going to look at your watch and say, okay, I'll be done in 30 seconds. You're going to say, how much time do you have? How much time do you have? I need you to help me. We all need Allah's help, but we rush through these things. So, ata'ani min Allah, we need to have consideration with others and also with Allah and not rush with Him. And then the last thing I'll say is with yourself. One of the greatest spiritual, subhanAllah, I'm losing my English today. One of the greatest spiritual traps that shaitan sets for us is he wants us to lose hope in ourselves. He wants us to have despair in ourselves, that you are actually hopeless. You're hopeless. Look at you. You make the same mistake every single day. You're never going to get better. You're never going to get better. This is the shaitanic rhetoric. And he wants us to truly believe that no matter how hard we try and no matter how much we stick to something, there is no hope for us. That's his goal. That's shaitan's goal. Built into that messaging is what? Is the message of haste. Look at you. It's been 5 days and you haven't changed your life. Who said it was only going to take 5 days to change your life? Who said it wasn't going to take 5 years? A person that wants to get better has to give themselves time. You have to give yourself time. Anything in life that is worth the success of working for, built into that equation is time. There's no such thing as a shortcut. It's not real. And included in that is your iman, your spiritual development. I remember when I was a kid, when I was memorizing Quran for school, I was like 11 years old, and I had so much Quran to memorize. My teachers were going to test me the next day. I was very nervous. And I was like I was sitting there in bed like hopeless. I was like, I didn't do it. And I didn't, a lot of people, I had a Desi Hafiz Sahib for a while, and they're tough, but there's no one tougher on their student than a Syrian woman. My Syrian woman teacher, my God, right? I love her so much. Wallahi, I love her so much. She changed my life. But man, they don't yell, they don't hit, they just look at you. And they don't look at you, they look into you. And they make you feel so ashamed, right? So she would know you just didn't work hard. So there would be nights where I'm like desperate. I'm like, I have no hope. I have to memorize 5 pages. It's like 11 p.m. I'm being tested at 8 in the morning the next morning. I'm 11 years old. I just want a fruit roll up. Like, I'm just like, my life. And I would say, oh Allah, I would make dua, oh Allah, just allow me to wake up tomorrow with the Quran memorized. With my lesson done. Just allow me to wake up with my lesson. If you ever did hifz, if you ever memorized, you've made that dua before. Oh Allah, just give it to me. Just allow me to wake up like miraculously, right? And subhanallah, I would wake up and nothing was there. Because there's an embedded lesson in that, which is what? You cannot trick hard work. You cannot rush it. You have to give it its haqq. You have to give it its time. Many of us start the journey towards Allah and we give up very quickly because we see that we're not changing as fast as we want. But as anyone who has completed something that is complex will tell you, if you want to accomplish something, you cannot be in love with the destination. You have to be in love with the process. You have to love the work. You have to love it. I feel like I'm coaching Musa in basketball. You have to love the work. You cannot only love the destination. You have to actually appreciate every step of the way. And that will make you a person that what? That is patient with yourself. That has consideration for your journey. May Allah Ta'ala grant us this, and may Allah Ta'ala protect us from the hastiness that we feel within ourselves and from the devil that is outside of us. Ameen ya Rab. Okay, let's do one more narration, inshallah. The Q&A is also open, by the way. We have a lot of questions coming in, but if you want, slido.com, and then 30 and up is the code. Okay, the next narration from the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Imam at-Tirmidhi, where he says that the Prophet ﷺ said and this is a narration that's has multiple different chains, so we'll go from one of them. He says, اتق الله حيثما كنت واتبعي السيئة الحسنة تمحوها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. The Prophet ﷺ said, remember Allah wherever you are. Follow a wrong with a right, it will erase it, and treat people well. This narration has a story behind it. There's a story in which the Prophet ﷺ, he was the teacher and the leader and the guide, the mentor of Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ was stationed in Medina. And that was where the companions, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, they learned from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in order for the message of Islam that was spreading to be supported, some of these people that were learning in Medina, they could not stay there. So some of these students of the Prophet ﷺ, they had to move. They had to leave. And he would send, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these people to these places to become the imams and to become the teachers and the sheikhs of these new communities. So one of these people was none other than Muad ibn Jabal, radiallahu anhu, who became the imam and the sheikh and the teacher of the people of Yemen. That was the region that he went to, that he was sent to. There were tribes from Yemen that had accepted Islam, and they needed somebody that could support them and give them what they needed. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to have this habit where he and Muad would go on walks every morning, or not every morning, but regularly after Fajr. They would pray and then they would go for a walk together. Muad, by the way, was one of the few companions of the Prophet ﷺ who had such a close relationship with him. His relationship was so close that he received one of the best gifts that the Prophet ﷺ has ever given to anybody. The Prophet ﷺ gave so many gifts to people. He gave them a cloak off of his back. He gave them, special belongings that only he had. But with Mu'adh, he told him something that no one else really got outside of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, which was a direct statement where he says, Ya Muad, inni uhibbuk. That, oh Muad, inni, like, he basically said, for real, I love you. Inni uhibbuk. He could have just said, uhibbuk ya Muad, I love you, oh Muad. But he says, inni uhibbuk, which means, really, I love you. And the other companions, when they heard this, they were like, man, why not us? You know, they wanted some of that bromance too, the prophetic, the prophetic love from the Prophet ﷺ. So Muad, there was something very special about him. There was something ajib about Muad. And one of the things that the scholars say that it possibly made him this way was that he always attended the classes of the Prophet ﷺ. He never ever missed them. Like he would like reconfigure his entire life so that he could be in the company of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why he got these special morning walks, right? This is before 10,000 steps. He got these special morning walks with the Prophet ﷺ. So they would go on these walks. And then one day, the Prophet ﷺ, he tells Muad that, oh Muad, I need you to go to Yemen and to go on an expedition to Yemen and to be there with them. And so Muad is like excited. Obviously, it's a job, a responsibility being given by his teacher. Very excited. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he tells Muad that when you come back, I will not be here. And Muad instantly understands that this is not a matter of him traveling. He's talking about his own demise. And that he's going to be no longer on this earth. And so Muad does what any of us would do, and he starts to cry. Because he's being told now he has to leave. And then he's being told, when I come back, you're not going to be here. And I can only imagine he's thinking about all the time he spent with him and these walks together. And the Prophet ﷺ, he refocuses Muad. And he gives him his curriculum. He says, كيف تقضي يا Muad? How are you going to teach them? How are you going to judge between them if they come to you with questions? And he says, بكتاب by the book of Allah. I'm going to look there for my answers first. And then the Prophet ﷺ says something very interesting. Are you ready for this? This is going to blow your mind. Right? He says, كيف تقضي يا Muad? He says, بكتاب الله. He says, وإن لم تجد. What if you don't find your answer there? Like, what if somebody comes to you with the question, are Pop-Tarts halal? And you're like, you're looking in the Quran. Pop-Tarts. Yes, alunaq anil Pop-Tart. Like, no, like there's no Pop-Tart ayah in the Quran. So he said, how are you going to find that? وَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ. Very interesting, by the way. This question itself is so empowering. It's so strengthening. Why? Because many of us are like, an answer won't be in the Quran? Reddit was right. Like, Islam is not true. No, the Prophet himself is saying that. You're not going to find every single complex, nuanced answer in the Quran. That's not how this works. If you've read the Quran, you know that it's not a legal manual. It is a book of guidance that has principles, and those principles are used to develop law. So then he says, وَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ. He says, وَبِسُنَّةِ رَسُولِهِ. Then I will look in the example of his messenger, meaning you, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Great, Quran, Sunnah, awesome. We have all of our answers, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, وَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ. And what if you don't find it there? Like, what if you look in the Quran? What if you go back to the narrations and everything that you know? And I want you guys to realize the companions knew the Sunnah better than us. We have the compilation of the word, but they lived with the teacher. They lived and studied with the teacher. There's no comparison to somebody who has books versus somebody who was the apprentice. It's not the same. There's a reason why Tatsu in Dallas, the sushi restaurant, is so in high demand. A lot of us don't even know, right? It won Dallas's top restaurant. I have a lot of free time, apparently. I look up these things. Why? It's so in high demand. Why? Because the guy who is the chef there trained under like the most renowned sushi chef in Japan. And so if you want to get in, you have like months in advance you have to wait. Why? Because apprenticeship is irreplaceable. You cannot replicate it. So Muad was the apprentice of the Prophet ﷺ. He has the Quran, he has the Sunnah. And then the Prophet says, what if you don't find it, ﷺ, in my Sunnah either? He says, ثُمَّ اجْتَهِدُ عَلَىٰ رَأْيِي. Then I will have to use the sources that I have, the Quran, the Sunnah, and my intellect. I'll have to process everything. And I'll have to make what we call legal analogy. Legal analogy. right? Is it halal to buy a car? Oh, I don't know. Let's look in the Quran. I don't see any mention of car. Let's look in the hadith. I don't see any mention of car. But I do see camels, donkeys, horses. Oh, interesting. So now I'm going to do what's called qiyas. And I'm going to make this analogy. I just give that was like Miss Rachel fiqh, okay? What I just did right there was a fiqh lesson from Miss Rachel. May Allah Ta'ala guide her and protect her, ya Rab. Ameen. Okay, a real one, a hero, a queen. So, let's go back to this. So he tells Muad that, and then the Prophet is so happy with his answer that he says what? May Allah bless the messenger of his messenger. Like basically you're my, like imagine his heart probably was swelling with emotion. Like all of these things are swirling. He's getting like love and he's getting like this tragic news. And then he's like being called this special title. May Allah bless the messenger of the messenger. And then he tells him after the fiqh lesson, okay, the law, the legal lesson, then the Prophet ﷺ gives him this hadith. So you see how like weighty this is? This is like very heavy. I mean, you're talking about literally in Arabic what we call wasiyah. This is like the last testament between two people, teacher and student. He says, Ya Mu'adh, ittaqillaha haythu ma kunt. Remember Allah wherever you are. Remember Allah wherever you are. I mean, this is such a powerful concept. In these words is like the communication of a person who's leaving somebody and they don't know what else to tell them. This is the best thing you could say. Remember Allah wherever you are. In an environment that you find yourself in, you need to be able to remember Allah. There are some environments that inherently it is almost impossible to remember Allah because the remembrance of Allah in that environment would bring about so much shame that your nafs would be like, I can't. Oil and water. I can't do it. Part of the challenge of being a Muslim is not placing ourselves in environments where the remembrance of Allah is so difficult. Some environments are like dhikr phobic. We can't do it there because your heart and mind are just simply not primed to remember Allah in those scenarios. And so you and I have to make these decisions. You and I really have to think deeply, especially at this age. You know, Monday night is a little different. I'm sorry if you come to both, but hopefully you can tell the difference. Monday night is a little more. Tuesday night is like, look, we have to start getting serious. This knee pain, back pain stuff, it's just a sign. Wallahi, I'm telling you this. My teacher said, your body having pain is just a sign of your slow death. Like, I don't say this on Monday night because they're all like 21, 25, 27. But all of the back pain you have, you know, playing pickleball, all of the knee pain, all of this, it's just a sign of your body's slow returning back to our Creator. Slowly, right? It's just a reality. I don't mean to make things grim. It's just a reality, right? We need more sleep. We feel sensitive to food. We can't have we can't even say the word caffeine after 6, right? Let alone drink caffeine. But we're like, no, don't show me a coffee bean. God forbid. I might stay up till 12, you know? We're so sensitive. This is a sign of our body losing its resilience, right? Our body's losing its resilience. It's the natural way. It doesn't mean that you just give in and concede. No, take care of yourself. Exercise, eat right, etc. All right, Dr. Mario's looking at me. Take care of yourself, right? Have your turmeric, inshallah. Not too much. But realize that this is the eventuality, okay? So, ittaqillaha haythu ma kunt. This has to be like on the forefront of our mind. Wherever I put myself, wherever I even teach my kids. You know, there's one thing. You can try to control your family, your kids. You can try to like control it all you want. But all of that control will be fruitless once you are no longer in the position to control. The thing you have to teach your kids, the thing you have to impart upon your younger siblings or whoever it is that you have that kind of authority over is the idea that what? You are responsible for your own relationship with Allah. I'm here to help. I'm here to guide. But once you're on your own, that's it. That's it. Ittaqillah haythu ma kunt. Then he says, so powerful, watbi'i, it's a command. Follow, from taba'a, to follow something. And taba'a means, right? Ittiba'a means to follow something exactly. Like, you know, when you were a kid and you would put your footprint in the footprint of your, like your mom or dad was walking on the sand, and then you would put your foot in the same footprint, right? None of us had that childhood? Yeah, me neither. Okay, so I just saw it in a movie once. So, but ittiba'a, that's what it means, literally, like place your foot over that. That's why, what verb does Allah use to follow the messenger in the Quran? Ittiba', wattabi'a, follow him, boom, right? Follow him, place your foot right where his foot was. No half-baked sunnah. No, like it's only sunnah or it's only makruh. Put your foot right there. Place your foot right there. Some scholars in Medina, they would walk around barefoot because they would say, I don't want to wear shoes where the Prophet himself walked. On the off chance that maybe my foot might touch where his foot touched. Maybe. So they used to walk, this is today, they would walk around barefoot. And people are like, look at this crazy guy. And he's like, not crazy, just hopeful that maybe my foot would touch where his foot was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that verb, ittiba', very strong verb. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, watbi'i, follow up. Watbi'i as-sayyi'ata al-hasanata tamhuha. Follow up every mistake with a good deed. Why? It will erase it. So interesting. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say, إِذَا أَخْطَأَ. He didn't say, when this person makes a mistake, or if you committed a mistake, right? إِذَا فَعَلْتَ السَّيِّئَةَ. No, he didn't say that. He said, when you make a mistake. It will happen. There is no if. There's only when. This itself is such a relief for the believer. It's so relieving. You know, part of the fear of making mistakes is the anticipation of the guilt. Like, oh man, if I do this, then all of this guilt is going to hit me like a truck, and I'm going to realize what a bad person I am, what a failure I am. The Prophet ﷺ almost like beautifully is like, yeah, you have failed. That's okay. It's part of what it means to be human. You're going to miss some shots. You're going to oversleep some fajrs, right? You're going to say things that you wish you could take back. You're going to miss opportunities. That's okay. The most important thing for a person when they make a mistake is not to dwell on the mistake. But as he says, وَاتْبِعِي السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُوهَا. Follow it up with a good deed immediately. It will erase it. It will erase it. And then he says, وَخَالِقِ النَّاسَ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. Treat people beautifully. Treat people beautifully. You know, I find this narration to be so compelling because he's sending Muad to a new place with people, like a new community. And, you know, many of us maybe like are not from Dallas. Like, how many of you were born in Dallas? Raise your hand. You're like a rare breed, like Batul and some others. Yeah. How many of you moved here from somewhere else? Yeah, this is the story of Dallas, right? And one of the things that is challenging when you move somewhere new is like, how am I going to meet people? How am I going to integrate into the community? Or maybe if you were born here but you accepted Islam, or if you were born here but you weren't really a part of the Muslim community and then you started integrating. And subhanAllah, here he's teaching Muad, who yes, he's going as a teacher, but he's still new. He's not Yemeni, right? He's going to Yemen with no knowledge of Fahsa and Hanith and any of this. And he's saying, go there, and this is how you're going to become one of them. Number one, take care of your relationship with Allah. Your relationship with Allah is first and foremost. Doesn't matter how much fiqh you have, doesn't matter how much this you have. Your relationship with Allah is first and foremost. Life is going to have its sunny days, its rainy days, its storms. It's going to have its 9,000 flight cancellations, right? But you need to make sure that your relationship with Allah is solid. Solid. It will be the thing that you lean on when everything else around you feels like it's not strong. Number two, when you make a mistake, you have to own up to it. You have to be humble. An arrogant person finds it difficult to even admit that they've made a mistake. But when you make a mistake, you not only have to admit to it, but you have to follow it up with a good deed. That admission and that ownership. And number three, treat people well, because that's how you're going to blend in with people. That's how you're going to be around people. And that's why people are going to want to be with you. All of these traits are actually the spiritual makeup of a person that is like a perfect member of any family, of any relationship, any society. This person is, that's what they look like. They're God conscious. They have no problem admitting their faults and fixing their mistakes. And they generally are beautiful with their character with people, right? So I find this hadith and the story behind it to be very compelling. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all these beautiful traits. We ask Allah ta'ala to make us those that have this patience, this consideration, and that we derive it from Him. And we ask Allah ta'ala to protect us from haste and protect us from hasty decisions that are mistakes. Ameen ya Rabb. We ask Allah ta'ala to grant us the blessing of the prophetic company in Jannah. And then we ask Allah ta'ala that He gives us not only that company, but the traits of one of His companions. We ask Allah ta'ala to give us the taqwa of Him, that we are remembering of Him wherever we are. We ask Allah ta'ala to allow us to always be humble enough to follow up any mistakes that we make with a good deed. And we ask Allah ta'ala to give us good character in situations, and that if we fail and falter, that He allow us the strength to pick ourselves back up and keep continuing down the path. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, we'll have Q&A for a few minutes, and then we'll wrap it up, inshallah. Just a reminder to everybody, Sheikh Mikhail's normal Wednesday halaqah is not happening this week or for the next few weeks because he's traveling. He's in Australia doing some programs. So we'll be on break on Wednesdays. So if you normally attended, I know many of us do, just keep that in mind for your calendar, inshallah. Okay? How should one develop a healthy fear of Allah, since there should be a balance between His love, mercy, and fear? In short, this is a very complex question, but there's a famous story that, subhanAllah, is coming to my mind, and so I'll share it with you. It's actually a story of the author of the book that we're reading on Monday nights. His name is Sheikh Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti, rahimahullah. He was a Syrian scholar, and he had this story, this moment in his life that answered this question. Actually, somebody asked him this very same question. It's a very emotional story, and you know me, so I'm going to just try to get to the point. He basically gave a talk. He gave a lecture on God consciousness and balancing, spiritual development, fear and love of Allah, etc. He gave a lecture, and I forget where it was. It was somewhere in the Middle East. And there was a woman in attendance who was a journalist who was not Muslim. And she, after the talk, the sheikh went to his office, or the office that was given to him, and he was kind of like recovering. Just kind of, he was elderly, so he gets some time, just sit, relax, have a bottle of water, and just rest after the long workshop, or the long lesson. And one of the students of the sheikh came and said, "Sheikh, we know that you're resting, but there's this woman outside who seems like very insistent that she needs to talk to you." And so he said, "Sure, yeah, absolutely." So she came in, and she introduced herself, and she said, "I'm not Muslim, but I felt this very strong connection to what you were saying tonight, and I wanted to ask you one question that I just couldn't get myself to understand. As you're talking about Allah and how amazing He is and how we should love Him and fear Him," she goes, I understood everything and I agree with almost everything but one. There's one thing that I just can't understand." And she said, "How is it possible to have this emotion that we talk about, fear, with Allah if we're supposed to love Him? Like, how are we supposed to love Allah more than anything and know that He loves us? And how are we supposed to take this information and this belief and have conviction in it and then still somehow fear Him?" And she was like getting emotional. She was trying to square what looked like a contradictory thought to her. She was misunderstanding or having trouble. And when she asked the question, the sheikh himself started to cry. And he said, "Is there anything more fearful to somebody who loves than not having that love reciprocated back?" Like, what is more fearful to a child than not being loved by their parents? Or what's more fearful to a spouse, loving their spouse and not getting that love back? So then when you love Allah, the fear that you have is actually the fear of not receiving that love back. Like, what sins am I committing that are blocking me from that? What things am I doing wrong? Or what thing? The fear of Allah is actually the fear of what? Not being loved by Allah. And that is the core of that khawf, that fear that we talk about. So when this person says, how do we develop healthy fear of Allah, since there should be a balance between love and mercy, you're not fearing Allah like you fear a criminal. No, wala'idh billah. Or you fear a murderer. No, that's not how we fear Allah. We fear Allah in the way that we are desperate not to put ourselves in a situation where we are going to lose Him. Because as the Shaykh said, what is more fearful to a person who loves somebody than not being loved back, right? So balance it by thinking about how can I remove the things that are going to cause issues in my relationship with Allah, and how can I repent, as Allah Ta'ala loves repentance. Allahu a'lam. The next, how do you deal with having patience in getting married where your parents and society is pushing you to get it done, but you would rather wait? I probably should have started the whole night with this. Patience is not easy. Patience is not easy. So we can speak about this specific scenario, but let's go ahead and extend it to anything. I mean, having patience with regards to familial or societal factors pushing you. I mean, there are people who are married and have to have patience. Guess what? Right? For all you single people. When you get married, you have to have patience still. There are people who they have to have patience to have a child. Allah has not yet blessed them with that. And then when they have a kid, they realize, like, oh, this requires patience too. Everything requires patience. The unemployed person is begging Allah for a job. They get a job and they realize, man, I have to have patience at work. So there is no realm of your life where you do not have to have patience. Realize that. You have to be okay with the work. You have to embrace the work. Patience is a muscle that will never, ever be not used. You have to have it in all scenarios. So no matter no matter how you're viewing the scenario that you're in, the same rules apply, which is what? Patience is always going to be better off for you than rushing. It's going to be better off for you than damaging people with words, with actions, with behaviors. Patience will always be more rewarding. It is something, I always tell people this, by the way, the patience that it takes to remain patient and modest and pious while single will serve you when you get married. It doesn't it's not like a fruitless endeavor. Oh man, I was so patient, now I'm married, I wasted all that time. No. Now that you're married, there's going to be situations where you're going to have parents, in-laws, that you're going to have to be patient with. It is a reality. Or your own parents. Wait till you come across the great Eid debate. Where do we do Eid? Right? That's going to require some patience. There are going to be some moments in your marriage where you're like, I did not expect this. But Allah Ta'ala prepared you. He prepared you like He prepared Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. وَاسْتَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي. I prepared you for myself. Every day in your life, all of the previous days you lived are just preparation for tomorrow. And then when tomorrow happens, you add that to the list. They call it in basketball stacking days. You can tell I'm coaching my son. You just got to stack days, right? You stack 100 days, 200 days, 300 days, you're 300 days better than you were a year ago. You're a better person. And now the scenario you're in is better because of that. We ask Allah Ta'ala to give us tawfiq. There are some specific questions that are like personal. I would seek out like specific scholarly advice with a larger context that's longer than the character limit that we have here, because it's not beneficial or productive to go through some personal stuff, especially in public. How can you become consistent in reading the Quran? I find it difficult, boring, and irrelevant to my life at times. Astaghfirullah. Well, it's good that you threw in that last word. So, that wasn't me. That was this person. So props to you for just kind of, closing that loop. Okay, so look, anything is boring if you don't understand the purpose and the benefit of it. Anything is boring. How many of you enjoy sleep? Anyone like sleep? Okay, this is weird. I thought this is 30 and up. right? My son literally says sleep is so boring, Baba. So boring. And this is like in the middle of me begging him, please go to sleep so I can sleep. Because I can't sleep until you sleep. He goes, Baba, sleep is so boring. So then I have to explain to him, you have to sleep so that your body is ready for tomorrow. You have all these plans. You want to do this, right? Yeah. Okay. If you don't sleep, you're not going to be good for it. You're going to be bad at this. You're not going to have fun. Your friends are going to have fun. You're not going to have fun. Oh, okay. So I tell him, I have to speak his language. I'm like, you know how we plug in your iPad? Sleep is like plugging in your iPad for you, right? For your body. We're plugging you in tonight, okay? So when you don't know the purpose of something, you completely undervalue it, right? What's the purpose of the Quran? Let me give you a couple, just the names of the Quran, right? An-Nur, it's the light. It illuminates you when you are in a dark place, right? And you can, by the way, search. You don't have to read it from cover to cover. You can. You can also just search for themes in the Quran. Like, what if you Google search hopefulness and trust in Allah in the Quran? You're going to have an entire, like, ChatGPT is kind of weird. It scares me a little bit. But this is actually a very beneficial tool. Just make sure it's not making up Quranic verses. You can ask it. Say, hey, can you give me some verses from the Quran that deal with hopefulness? And it'll pull some stuff from the internet. And it'll give you something. So you can thematically look at it. And then you'll start to say, oh, wow, this is actually very, very relevant. And then here's what you do. You take that verse, and then you go to that surah, and you take that verse, and you look now at the context of it. And you say, where that verse that's so beautiful, that verse, that one line that's so powerful, where did that come from? You go to the surah, you open it up, and you say, let me look at the 10 verses before and the 10 verses after and see how that story was developed. And you go and read it, and guess what? That becomes your Quran for the day. Pair it with a cup of coffee at suhbah, beautiful, right? Or some matcha. That's how you engage in Quran. Number one, try to find relevant passages, themes that you're connecting to. What are you going through in life? Maybe you're in a really good point right now. Maybe things are going well. Search for verses on gratitude. Allah will remind you how to be grateful. Maybe you're confused. Maybe things are kind of stagnant and boring. Search for verses on patience and perseverance. Look for it. Look for the words in the Quran that will give you that inspiration and spend some time there. So that's number one. Number two, every day a little bit. You don't have to read it cover to cover. You don't have to finish a surah every day. You don't have to do all that. Don't give yourself these false conditions. Read a little bit every day. Read for 5 minutes every single day. And you'll see that your connection and your relationship with the Quran will deepen. And also, of course, lastly, but most importantly, you have to make sure that you're acting on what you're reading to see the benefit of it, right? To see the benefit of what you're doing. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, we'll conclude with one more question, inshallah. Oh, God. I don't want to answer this, but I feel like I have to. You mentioned there is a certain adab to speaking with the Prophet ﷺ, and many speak about the same for scholars. Would you like us to change how we speak to you? No, I was joking a little. I'm okay, guys. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. How is one to get married if they have no assistance from family and friends, and ARM says we can't talk to people at Roots? Look, you're not going to get me to feel bad for you, okay? You cannot talk to people in here. You can talk to people out there. I can't control what you do at Arwa or Kahwa House, okay? But the reason I had that rule about Roots is because people are coming here in a state to learn, to connect. They may not be coming here to be proposed to. My biggest fear, the reason why I say this is because I don't want people to come here afraid with their guard up because they won't be ready to learn, okay? If you saw someone in the ER and you really thought they were cute, you still should not ask them to marry you in the ER. Wait until they're out of the ER. Wait until they're discharged, okay? I know it's like a great movie script, but it's not real. We are coming here to become better as Muslims. If you can use, look, Instagram, use what you got. I don't know. Do whatever you got to do. Just don't do it in this building. Okay? Allow people the space to come and learn. That's why I say that. Just respect people's time and that they want to come here. Now, if there's an event that's more social in nature, right? But don't do it at the halaqat. Respect the knowledge. Respect that we're coming here to come together for the book of Allah. And the best thing is, if this person is written for you, then there's nothing that I can do to get in the way of that. And if you don't ask them here, it doesn't mean that they're not going to marry you because they're written for you. Okay? And there's a lot of success stories that I won't point out from people who followed the rules. Okay? So that's all I'm saying is just respect the rules, inshallah. But how is one to get married if they have no assistance from family and friends? You know, it's tough. But I would say you start with a few good friends that you can rely on. I also have a general principle for people. You should have friends that are older than you. You should have friends that are further on in life than you. You should. Every person should have friends that are like one half or one full stage ahead of them. Because friendship should not be a group of people that are all identical. Your friends group should be made up of people where you can receive mentorship from, and you can also pass on that mentorship. And you can also be there for each other in different phases of your life. So if all of your friend circle looks exactly the same from like a demographic and like a metric standpoint, no one can really benefit each other. And you're not going to be able to receive, the goodwill of people that are in your life. So if you have friends that are maybe a little bit further along than you, they're married or whatnot, that's a great conversation for you to have with them to see, hey, I don't really think I have a lot of people that I can trust. Would you be comfortable helping me kind of figure out how to get started on this journey to look for someone to get married to? So we ask Allah Ta'ala to make it easy, inshallah. Okay. We'll go ahead and stop there, inshallah. We do have a few events this week, inshallah, so please grab a calendar on your way out. Barakallahu feekum. And we hope to see you there, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. If you guys could please just do me the favor of stacking